what does this
Come, Watson. Come. The game is afoot.
have to do with healing? And how many times do we go to the doctor's office hoping that they'll listen to us thoroughly, analyze every bit of our case, and give us a personalized treatment approach, only to end up having this happen instead? So many of us who are frustrated by this feel like there must be a better way. Well, let's see if there is. My name is Dr. Andrew Chambers. On this channel so far, I've talked about the importance of taking a whole person approach to assessment and treatment, why an over-reliance on supplements so often ends up in disappointment, and what you can do about it, as well as begun to offer my solution to those two problems, which is to utilize classical homeopathy with all of my clients. This video is the second video in my Homeopathy 101 series. In my last video, I went through some of the most common misconceptions that people have regarding homeopathy and did my best to correct them. In this video, I'm going to start going through some of the nitty-gritty details of just exactly how classical homeopathy is carried out, why it's done this way, and what kind of benefits this approach can offer people who are fed up with the conventional system. So we're going to start fittingly where I start with all of my new clients, which is right at the first visit in what is called the Homeopathic Intake. It all starts here with the Homeopathic Case Intake. There are several goals of the Homeopathic Intake, the first one of which is to gather a complete understanding of the client's or patient's current health concerns. Now, this would include physical concerns such as chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, allergies, respiratory issues, etc. And it also includes more mental emotional type concerns such as anxiety and depression. In my experience, for most people seeking homeopathic treatment, there are elements of both in the case that need to be addressed. The second primary goal of a homeopathic case intake is to gather a complete medical history of that person. So this will include things like past illnesses suffered as maybe a child, teenager, young adult, etc., as well as past treatments tried for several of these conditions. The main goal here being to understand how did this person get to where they are now. And the third main goal of the homeopathic case intake is to understand what other symptoms outside of the main health concerns a person is coming in with are present. In homeopathy, we call these types of symptoms concomitant symptoms. A good example of what would be called a concomitant symptom in homeopathy would be in a person with their main health concern being some type of autoimmune condition, but they also suffer from, daily or weekly long-term chronic headaches. Now, in a conventional type of intake, those headaches are going to be deemed mostly unimportant for helping the main autoimmune condition. But in homeopathy, we take a whole person approach, and so understanding the nature of the headaches will guide us in helping find a remedy for the autoimmune condition. A very important component of the homeopathic case intake is to, as much as possible, gather this information in the client's or patient's own words. Now, why is this important? It's important because in homeopathy, it is essential that the practitioner at all times has the most accurate information possible. And to accomplish this, it's important that the practitioner gathers this information in the client's own words rather than what could be a possible misinterpretation on our part, which could easily lead us astray. So, these are the main overall goals of the homeopathic intake. Now, the next question this kind of brings us to is, what is meant by a complete understanding of any one of these aspects? This is where homeopathy further separates itself from other types of intakes, whether that be conventional medical intakes or even naturopathic or holistic types of intakes. The degree of detail that we go into in homeopathy, which you'll see some examples of in a minute here, is unparalleled in other approaches. So let me go through a bit how this process is done. For each of the main health concerns and concomitant symptoms, we need all of the following information. So first, we need a very precise understanding of the condition the person is coming in with. Now, as an example, if a person is coming in with chronic pain of any kind, it's not enough just to have the descriptor be pain. We need to know the specific type of pain. And so that can be burning types of pains in some people, buzzing types of pain in others, tingling types of pain, cutting types of pain, pain that feels like we've been hit with a baseball bat or are bruised all over, and the variety goes on and on. Or if someone is coming in with anxiety as one of the main health concerns, we then need to know the specific nature of the anxiety. So for example, what are the specific types of thoughts that come up when a person is feeling more anxious? What are they anxious about? Is it anxiety centered around their own health? Maybe the health of a family member or friend? Is it anxiety about their performance at work or at school? Is it anxiety about what other people think of them if they're being judged or looked down on? And then what kind of physical symptoms or sensations do they experience along with that anxiety? Do they experience, tingling in the hands, coldness in the body or heat in the body? Do they experience a racing heart or feel like blood is rushing to their face, etc.? Upon gathering a detailed description of the specific type of condition for every complaint, we then have to understand in homeopathy the specific location where this complaint is manifesting. So going back to pain as an example, it's not enough to know, I have pain in my body, or I have pain in the arms, pain in the back, etc. We need to know, is it pain just in the shoulders and the knees, or pain in the wrists and the ankles, or is it pain on the lower back, the middle part of the back, or the upper back? Again, is it pain only on the left side of the back or the right side of the back? And then for other types of pains, is it pain more, superficially felt just on the skin or the muscles, or does it feel like it's deeper, like in the bone itself? Does the pain stay in one spot in the body, or does it seem to shift around from day to day? The same degree of detail for the location would apply to other types of pain, such as abdominal pain, chest pain, etc. And it would apply to things like skin and dermatology issues, where we need to know exactly where the specific rash or lesion is on the body. Now, the third aspect of understanding that we need for every single health concern and condition is what's called the modality. And if anyone goes through a homeopathic intake, they'll see that this is a constant question that homeopaths ask their clients when they're taking the case. Now, modality in this context refers to anything which modifies the symptom. And what this means in more concrete terms is anything which makes that symptom either somewhat better or makes it somewhat worse. And one of the unique things about homeopathy is how open-ended these types of modalities can be. So for a given condition or a given symptom, we'll ask such questions such as, is it made better or worse by sitting versus standing versus moving around? Or is it better or worse depending on if it's first thing in the morning, right before lunch, or later in the evening, or even at nighttime? Is it affected at all by eating or drinking? Does food make it somewhat relieved or make it even worse? And if it does it matter the temperature of the food or the temperature of the drink consumed? Is it affected by weather? So a sunny day versus a cloudy day versus a stormy day versus a more snowy and wintry kind of day? And then is there any psychological factors that modify it at all, such as does the condition get any worse when we're under severe work stress and feeling anxious, or does it get worse if we're having arguments and we're getting more angry or irritable? Is it any better or worse when we're in company versus when we're all by ourselves at home? These are just some of the examples of possible modifying factors in symptoms which are very important to take into account when taking the homeopathic case. And then finally, is there any specific exciting cause which the client can trace the onset of the condition or the symptom back to? For example, in a case of, say, depression, did the depression start, very suddenly after an unexpected breakup or the loss of a loved one? Or did it start very kind of slowly and gradually over the course of years with no real discernible onset? In a case of something like asthma, did it start suddenly after treatment for a different condition occurred? Or did it start suddenly based on exertion or weather changes? And then for something like, fatigue, brain fog, pains, was there any type of previous infection that might have triggered it, or any other ongoing stressor that might have played a role in it? All of this information is vitally important for, one, understanding how a person got to where they are now and what's going on in the present in their case. And then two, for actually making the specific individualized treatment recommendation for this specific person in front of me. So this kind of begs the question, what is the point of gathering all of this information? What are we going to actually do with it once we have it? As I'll describe in upcoming videos in the series on how a homeopathic case is actually analyzed and a homeopathic remedy actually selected, it's important to know that fundamentally, homeopathy is about, one, gathering a detailed and holistic understanding of the client's disease state and what's going on in their lives right now, 2, having a very detailed and holistic understanding of what each individual homeopathic remedy is capable of helping, and choosing a single homeopathic remedy at a given time that best fits what's going on in the client's condition, which will stimulate their own body's internal healing processes. And to put this in even more concrete terms, as homeopaths, we have hundreds and even thousands of different homeopathic remedies at our disposal. Now, the question is, out of all these hundreds and thousands of remedies, how do we actually choose which single homeopathic remedy we want to use at a given time for a client? So fundamentally, it starts by gathering this complete case that I've been describing so far. And then for every different homeopathic remedy, we also have a very thorough and complete list of all the types of conditions it helps, the specific locations it's more apt to help, and the specific types of modalities that it's more able to assist with. As we gather more and more details from our clients, we are simultaneously narrowing the field of possible remedies that match what's going on with them. The ultimate goal is to arrive at the single remedy that best matches what's going on with the client. And in homeopathy, we call this the simillimum, which is best able to stimulate the client's internal healing response in order to restore health. And another concrete example, and one which I think illustrates the importance of being able to take the time to actually gather this type of very thorough case, is the following. If you take 10 different people suffering from the same disease diagnosis, say depression or maybe fibromyalgia, you will find that at the very beginning of their description of what they're dealing with, it will usually sound extremely similar from person to person. So probably just about everyone with depression will describe feeling down or sad in some way, feeling more lethargic, lower energy, and just about everybody with fibromyalgia will describe pain and tender spots. So generally speaking, conventional medicine stops at this level of detail and says, well, those symptoms fit box A, so therefore you have disease diagnosis for box A, and therefore we will give you the 5 to 7 different prescription medications that are known to treat box A. However, it's my experience and the experience of homeopaths around the world that if you keep talking to those 10 different people with, say, depression, you will ultimately find out that they each experience their depression in quite different ways from one person to the other. For example, some people will describe feeling very depressed and anxious, or others will feel depressed and angry, but no anxiety. Some people will say that their depression is actually much better when they're around friends, family, etc., while others will say, being around people makes me feel a lot worse and I actually just feel better by myself. Some people's depression will come with pretty severe physical symptoms too. So some people may have depression and GI symptoms, or depression and chronic pain, or depression and headaches. And some people have depression with some memory problems, cognitive problems, and brain fog, while others won't have that problem at all with their depression. And of course, you'll find some people where, again, the depression very clearly stems from some type of exciting cause, such as the loss of a loved one, a breakup, or other type of life stressor, and other people will really have no such exciting cause in their history. The same type of thing would be true for more physical type conditions such as fibromyalgia. You'll have some people who say, I feel the pain, superficially kind of in the muscles and the skin is sensitive. And others will say, I don't feel it there at all. It's much deeper in the body, like in the bones or the very deep muscles. Some people's pain will actually be much better if they're able to stay mobile, stay moving. Sometimes even exercise will improve the intensity of the pain. And other people, the pain is much, much worse with any type of movement and they just feel better staying still for the most part. Other types of changes from one person to another could be some people's pain is much worse in the heat of the sun, while others, it might feel great. And some people's pain is going to be a lot worse before a storm comes in, while others, again, will probably feel no difference at all from that. And then the psychological or the emotional aspect of pain, where some people I talk to will have pain much, much worse when they are anxious or stressed about something. Others, it'll be much worse if they're angry about something. And then maybe a third person, neither stress, anxiety, or anger has any effect on the pain one way or another. Now, for conventional types of approaches, these details, they just seem trivial or unimportant or ultimately meaningless for the diagnosis and the treatment. But as I've kind of been saying, for homeopathy, these types of differences are totally essential to understand because the given treatment recommendations are always fully individualized. And they're fully individualized based exactly on these types of differences from one person to the next. For each of the different types of presentations and examples I've gone through, those people would each require a different homeopathic remedy, even though they may be suffering from the same disease diagnosis. And it's really only by actually taking the time to go through and thoroughly understand all of these aspects of a client's or a patient's experience that we can ultimately arrive on a good individualized recommendation for them. So as you might imagine, it's very hard, if not impossible, to actually gather this amount of detail and information for each new client within a 15 to 30 minute to 45 minute window. So because of that, I always schedule a 2 to 3 hour time slot for a new homeopathic intake. And I would say, generally speaking, the process of actually going through a very thorough homeopathic intake as a client, being listened to in a non-judgmental manner for that amount of time, can actually be quite therapeutic for clients all on its own. For most people, it's the longest they've ever talked to a single person about their health problems. And for some people, it's the longest they've ever talked to a single person about themselves at all. And I do find for many people, this type of conversation actually can generate some insights into their life that they hadn't seen before because they've never gone through things in this degree of detail. And therefore, I have seen people make some pretty substantial changes in their lives just based on insights generated from this kind of approach. And usually when people hear it's going to be a 2 to 3 hour conversation or intake, the first thing they say is, how could we possibly spend this much time talking about me or what's going on with me? And I almost always find that once people start talking about this very important aspect of their lives, they totally get immersed in the process and the time tends to just fly by. So I hope you now have a good understanding of what makes up a homeopathic intake, why it's done that way, and the benefits that this kind of approach offers. In my next video in the Homeopathy 101 series, I'm going to go through, well, now once we've taken the case, how do we do the next step? How do we actually analyze that case and ultimately select the remedy that we're going to have the person start? If you missed the first video in this series, Homeopathy 101, What It Isn't, What It Is, I highly recommend going back and watching it, as it goes through some of the many misconceptions that people have about homeopathy and does a really good job of laying the groundwork for the rest of the videos to come in this series. And I will have a link to that video at the bottom of your screen. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, hit the like button, as that helps it reach more people. And until next time, be well, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.